Welcome to the Mindful Moments podcast. For those who are new, welcome. It's lovely to have you. And for those who are tuning in again, it's lovely to have you back. So these podcasts are an opportunity for us at Mindful Sparks to share all the really amazing things that are happening within our community and to show like a real diverse range of people and the ways that they engage with mindfulness and how they integrate mindfulness into their day, like personally and professionally. So my name's Lily. I am the founder of Mindful Sparks, and today I am joined by Carolina Herrera, the women's coach, guide, and mentor. So Carolina is originally from Colombia. She grew up in London and has been living in Asia for the past 15 years. She works with women, helping them reconnect with their spark and get clear on what they want to do and how they want to show up in this season of their lives. So thank you so much for joining us today, Carolina. I'm really looking forward to hearing about the work that you do with women and, where that kind of crossover with mindfulness comes in.
Thank you, Lily. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm super excited to do this and share a little bit about my perspective on mindfulness and how I integrate it with the work that I do and in my life as well.
Cool. So let's just start at the beginning. We do this with everyone that we're speaking to. Like, can you pinpoint a moment or a period of time where mindfulness kind of entered your life, like what that looked like and how that became something that you got interested in?
I can actually remember the exact moment because I had just had my second daughter, my second child. I have a son and a daughter, and my mom had been spending some time with me. She spent like the first 3 months with me, and I was living in Singapore at the time, and she left to go back to London, and she left a book for me. So I remember going down, having a little break whilst my daughter was having a nap, and I went downstairs to like the swimming pool area, and I looked at the book, and it was a mindfulness book, like I don't know, mindfulness for dummies or something. So that was the beginning. So it was a nice thing that I did every day, was just go downstairs for 20 minutes and read a little bit from this book.
Mm-hmm. And is there anything that when you were reading that, so I'm going to guess you were kind of new to it, you hadn't really heard much about it.
Yes, yeah.
So is there anything that whilst you were reading it, you were kind of like, oh, wow, this really like resonates with me, or this sounds really interesting that I want to, explore this further?
Yeah, so for sure. So I think that's why I kind of kept going every day downstairs for 20 minutes to read it. So what it was, I had heard of the concept, and but at the time I felt it was something that I thought people did, right? Like you have to put time aside for this thing called mindfulness, a little bit like meditation. So what was really nice whilst I was reading the book was understanding that it could just be something that you just are, or you integrate into your life, and it could kind of be like woven in and out throughout your day quite nicely. So I love that concept. And it resonated a lot as well, because I don't know, like if you know, the name of my kind of coaching practice is Take Time to Be You. So from the very beginning, when I had started coaching women, which was just a few years before I had my daughter, I had understood the importance of taking time to kind of sit and listen to yourself. And so I felt that mindfulness was part of that, and that was something that I was perhaps already doing. And so I wanted to learn more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And do you find those moments of stillness, of quietness, do you find them like they're always the same, or they change, day to day? Like, can you see any kind of patterns in those moments?
Yeah. For sure. I think they're never the same. I think what I've sort of learned with time, and kind of what works for me more than anything, more than sort of looking for those perfect moments on a daily basis, is more the intention that I set within myself. And because I find value in just kind of having that time to just be still, not still like literally like sit still, but just kind of to reconnect with myself, I guess is the word. And to be very, very present. I try to add them in where I can. And so I have quite I would say, a fluid lifestyle where, I don't work from one place. I love working from different cafes. I move around the whole day. So what I tend to do is I actually find those moments when I'm walking. So as I walk, those are the moments where I'm kind of connecting with myself and I guess practicing what I would call mindfulness, if I was to kind of put a label to the action. Yeah.
That's super cool. And I think that's so important as well, like to talk about, because I think a lot of people, like you're saying, it's something that you do, like, I have to go to a place, maybe wear certain clothes or sit in a certain way, or say certain words to do mindfulness. But mindfulness is something, it is that kind of it is a lifestyle, and it is also that just checking in, like you're saying, checking in with yourself, just being like, for me, like one of the most important questions I ever asked myself is like, what do I need right now in this moment? What do I need right now to better support my well-being or my mental health or my physical health, and even if that's what people do, like whenever we do workshops or trainings at schools or in the community, we always say, like, if you just ask yourself this throughout the day, take these little moments to check in, you will see results. And then you can begin to dig deeper, do other work, maybe go to these places. There's nothing wrong. I love going to meditation retreats, things like that, where you are in a certain environment at a certain time doing a certain practice. There's so many benefits to that as well. But then the reality is, it's not, you're working, or you've got a family, you're here, there, and everywhere. It's not practical for a lot of the time.
Yeah, I think so. I think for sure I agree that like the best way for me to see it is almost like it's a way of life, not because I would say, oh, I'm like a mindfulness queen or anything like that, but it's a way of life in the sense that it's easier to just integrate it into everything that you do, so that it kind of sprinkles seamlessly into everything you do. Then you're not having to worry about like, oh, did I put time aside for that? Like, have I scheduled it in? Yeah.
And that also takes a lot of the pressure off as well. Like I think sometimes there could be that like that performative aspect to it, very we're living in a society where it's like, have you drunk this drink and eaten this food and
I
done
know, yeah.
exercise and done this many hours work and spent time, in nature? Like the checklist seems to constantly be getting bigger, and mindfulness is now added on that checklist. If you want to be quote unquote successful or live a quote unquote successful life, you need to do A, B, C, D. And that can be really hard, I think, for a lot of people to be like, well, how do I do this?
Yeah. And it's interesting because I think that almost it creates more stress, right? Like the whole reason people are going for all these other things is to reduce the stress in their lives. But when that list of kind of wellness practices keeps growing, then it becomes stressful in itself, right?
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Yeah.
And do you obviously you work as a coach, and and you're giving people advice and working with them through different stages of their lives. Do you find that integrating kind of mindfulness or talking about mindfulness in that capacity in your professional context works as well? Like it resonates in that space as well?
Yeah, for sure. I think what's interesting, and you've made me think about this, is that I think I don't, I guess I never call it mindfulness when I'm talking with clients. Like I haven't been mindful enough to call it mindfulness. But for sure, like what I do with every client and anyone that I speak to in that capacity is to invite them to, before we even get started, is to this moment of acknowledgement and acceptance of who they are and where they're at. Because it is when you are in that place, kind of fully connected to who you are, acknowledging everything about you and accepting everything about you, that then a sense of clarity comes, and then you're able to be clearer on what your vision is, on what you want to do, on the path ahead. So for sure, that's a part of every session, I guess, that I would do. And then, of course, depending on who I'm working with, you know, there will be kind of sharing tips in terms of like putting time aside for them to check in with themselves, and an invitation. And I think we've spoken about this before, about presence, like just an invitation to be present. And I think the gifts that come out of that, of really coming back to the present moment and sitting with whatever there is, I think there's a lot of gifts in that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think when we do, especially living in such a fast-paced world, you know, like even just information is so readily available to us in so many platforms. Things are shifting to like 24/7 service. That it's harder, I would say, for a lot of people to be able to find that time just to be like, it's okay that I'm still for 20 minutes. It's okay that I just sit and check in with me in whatever, you know, medium that works: meditation, journaling, movement, going for a walk, cooking, painting, you know, whatever outlet resonates with people. Just to kind of, again, just ask yourself, you know, what do I need right now in this moment that's going to benefit me? And that also, I think it can be, that can also be the hardest thing, because it's being willing to be vulnerable with yourself and being open with yourself to say what's maybe not working right now. Even though I had all the best intentions to do X, Y, and Z, actually this is maybe increasing my stress, or it's causing more conflict. How can I take that like that awareness and use that in a way, you know, to make a change from a place of compassion, without judgment, that might not give immediate results, but it's an investment.
Yeah. I think most of us, I don't know whether it was our generation or just up until now in history, but I think most people, we didn't grow up doing that, like that, checking in with ourselves and almost reminding ourselves to like be in the present moment. And as you said, you know, ask yourself, what do I need? What do I want right now? I think people are constantly either in the past or in the future, right? So yeah, for sure, as you say, that invitation to come back to the present, or to check in with yourself, with themselves, is really tricky, and is so just foreign to so many people.
And what are some of your strategies when you've noticed, like, okay, you know, I'm in the future, I'm thinking about the meetings I've got coming up, I'm thinking about, you know, this event's happening at my daughter's school and I need to do X, Y, Z. How do you like to bring yourself back to the present moment?
Yeah. So I would say I love doing many different things. Like I love having many different projects, and I feel like I thrive on that. But I also realized that because I love doing that, I needed to check in and make sure, okay, I'm not just overwhelming myself. And I really found that for me, I guess, whether it's just because I've been doing it for so long now, for so many years, but what I do is I try to, it's almost like when I walk from one meeting to the next, for me, that walking, those 10 minutes, or even if I'm in the same building, I'm going downstairs, I purposefully practice kind of leaving behind the activity I was doing and stepping into the activity that I'm about to do, so that I am fully present. And I feel, because I've noticed how beneficial that's been for me, I really kept that going. So what I noticed is that if I'm 100% like present, I can do in 20 minutes what I would usually, I don't know, what it would take me 2.5 hours if I'm actually thinking about the next thing or worrying about other stuff. So I think I felt the benefit of that practice, and that's kind of encouraged me to keep it going. So I tried to really do that. And I think being around children, as you would know, it's such a great reminder to be in the present moment, right? Also because they will tell you, they'll be like, put your phone away, like, are you listening, mommy? And so so they it's just a great reminder to like be mindful and just be in that moment. So of course, I've got two children, so they have been they've been great teachers for me, and constant reminders to be mindful, to be in the present moment, which I really think it's been a gift, and I would really say it's what allows me to get so much done, is that practice of just come back to the present moment, and then I see how much I can get done because of that. So
Yeah, that's awesome. And just curious, obviously we've spoken quite a lot about you as an individual, but as a family unit, do you kind of integrate mindfulness into the family unit together? Like, do you have strategies in the family that you will do together, to be more present with each other?
I think we don't do it as like, oh, as a family, let's get together and do an activity which feels like a mindful activity, for instance. But for sure, I guess it's an extension of just how I've like, because of what I do for work and the way I think nowadays. I really do invite my children to always to check in with themselves. And something that I've been doing more over the past few years, which I feel like I wish I'd known before with kids, is I think, they're born so wise and they know so much. And I think unfortunately, somehow we take it out of them. We, like, as parents, we have all these ideas of how things should be done, or what needs to happen next, and blah, 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 blah. And so the last few years, I really realized, like, gosh, really what we need to do is just nurture that kind of connection with themselves, and I check in with yourselves and you have the answers. And so with my kids, especially with my daughter, I always tell her, say, like, your heart knows, and just like breathe into your heart and ask the question and you get the answers. So we've had some very cute moments where she'll be maybe a little bit upset about something and she's crying and she's like, mommy, I'm checking in but my heart is not saying anything. And it's so cute. um it's like, it's wonderful, and I'm like, oh, I know the feeling because it happens to me too. But I think that's the one way where we've integrated it, is more to do with kind of just checking with yourself, how are you feeling, what do you need, and you have the answers in you. Like, I'm really trying to kind of get them to think of that, like the answers are inside of them.
I think that's so beautiful. Like, it's so important, right, to give the skills, the strategies, and to encourage them to be brave enough to do that. I think a lot of the time, like, you do go to an adult, or even as an adult, you go to somebody who's got the life experience, or maybe is older, or is in a position that you're working towards being in, for guidance. And of course, there's so much value in that, but at the same time, not compromising what you know and what you have inside of you. Because, like, I 100% agree, when we do take that moment to really check in with ourselves, I think sometimes it can surprise people what
Yeah,
they find within themselves.
100%. And yes, I guess to your point, as adults, and this is the crazy thing, and I think this is something I've learned with the work that I do, and I've noticed and I see in myself, is that, yeah, as adults, we're walking around constantly asking permission from everyone else to be ourselves, right? Like, that's what we want. It's like, well, is it okay to be me? Is it okay to show up as me? Is this okay? And there's that constant permission that we're looking for. So it actually has been a very freeing practice, and really something that I passionately believe in, is that I don't know, where people want to put their hands, but for me, I always gravitate towards my heart. But I really feel like there is just so much wisdom in there, and that wisdom is not necessarily like there are exact answers, but it's permission. It's permission to try. It's permission to experiment. It's telling you, what, like, whatever the universe or God or whatever you believe in will love you no matter what. Even if you try and you make a mistake, it's still okay.
Mm-mm.
And yeah, and I think as adults, we kind of need to hear that. And now that I've learned it, you know, it took me 40 years to learn this thing. Now that I know, I'm like, oh, I wish I'd known this before. But I really, yeah, I want to share it with my kids, of course, and with the women that I work.
Yeah. Gosh, that resonates so much with me. 100%.
Yeah.
Like, my therapist is amazing, and we'll be talking about something and she's like, what's coming up for you right now? And I'll be like, no, I feel like actually I'm really proud of this, or I feel like actually I'm being quite brave in this moment because of XYZ. And she's like, let's just sit in that. And she times me, and anytime I kind of distract myself from being present in that sensation, like,
Mm,
okay, I'm adding 10 more seconds on, like
yeah.
she's like, I
Oh,
really
that's lovely.
practice feeling proud, for example, and enjoying that moment for like a minute. Because I think a lot of the time, we it's oh, I've done that, now what, now what, now what, now what, like trying to always,
Yeah.
and like you were saying about looking for that kind of like permission or validation to be us, like, okay, well, I've done that, now what's my next achievement, or what do I need to do
Yeah.
next to be um this version of what I think I should be, instead of
Oh, it
just
should be, yeah.
enjoying that moment and celebrating that moment of like, I did something really tough today. I did something challenging today, or there was a challenging situation in my life, and I'm really proud of how I handled that. And I can just
Yeah.
be that and enjoy that. And that's linking back to like, what you were telling your daughter about the answer being in there. Like, you remember that. And next time a similar situation comes up or a similar sensation comes up in your body, you can be like, oh, I remember this. This is when I feel proud of myself. Like, you know,
Yes.
I can
Yeah.
enjoy that instead of just being like, okay, great, now what? You know?
Yeah, and I guess, I mean, it's perhaps a bit of a side note, but what's so interesting, and the fact that you spoke about feeling proud. One thing that I've noticed, and this is so interesting, and I never thought about this before, but gosh, for women, it
Mm.
is so hard to think of moments when when they're proud of themselves. Like, it's very easy for them to be like, oh, well, it's something to do with my child, with my husband, with work, but they find it really hard. We find it, because I remember doing the work as well and thinking like, gosh, yeah, it really is. It's so hard. And I almost feel like, as you said, like we have not been taught to celebrate that feeling of a sense of like recognition of yourself, right? Because that's, pride is like recognizing yourself and going like, I that feels good in myself. So that's super interesting. So I'm glad to hear your therapist is doing it. I think that's very good.
Yeah.
And I think it's an invitation for all of us to really think, yeah, what are we proud of? And constantly almost ask ourselves that, because yeah, even thinking about it now, I can't think, like, nothing comes to mind straight away except for doing this podcast today. Yeah. um, but yeah, it's interesting.
And this is also where, mindfulness comes in, because if we're not used to, or we don't have those practices in place, that 10-minute walk between clients, or, taking the time just to sit out and have your morning cup of tea or coffee, in the
Mm,
garden or on the balcony where you do have a bit of stillness.
yeah,
If we don't have those practices in place, we can't hear all these little moments that are popping up that we can celebrate. And
yeah,
especially with the work that we do with the students, with the children we work with, is really trying to get them okay with being still and quiet, because again, their energy is off the charts and they're running around,
yeah,
especially the younger ones. They're like, just want to do all the things, and it's like, we can do all the things, but we also need to balance that with noticing, what was a success for me today? What am I proud of today? What am I grateful of today? What was a little
mm,
challenging today? And how could I maybe engage with that differently tomorrow or next time? What could I, taking that accountability? I mean, I mentioned about children, but you can still get that accountability in
yeah,
children. Like, what was my role in that situation? and what can be celebrated from that, and then what can I reflect on, and where can those little adjustments be made for next time, so I don't get potentially so triggered, or I don't feel so frustrated, or it doesn't sit with me for the next 6 hours of my day, you know, just kind of a quiet voice in the background.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, I think again, it is kind of exercising that muscle, isn't it? It's like with everything, once you notice and you notice how it feels, then it's like thinking, okay, I could be doing this more regularly. It actually really does help me. And once you notice it, it's doing it more.
Right?
Yeah.
100%. Awesome. I mean, there's so many more things I'd love to talk to you about, but I'm also aware of the time. I don't want to take up too much more time. So one question we're kind of asking everyone who we chat with is about what mindfulness is. Like, how would you explain it? Because we've found from our data of people that attend our workshops and trainings, nearly 60% of them have heard of it. They've heard the word mindfulness, but they don't really know what it is. Like, they couldn't really explain what it is, or think about, aside from meditation, they can really think about a way of practicing mindfulness. So if one of these people came to you and was like, you know, I've heard of it, but I don't really know what it is, how would you explain it to them?
I'd be like, well, you could call Lilly. She's really good at number one, I would refer you. Number two, I guess I would say it is that practice of being present or being with yourself, kind of with openness and without judgment, and just listening to yourself, I guess. Yeah. So I think it's about, for me, I always think of it as being present and listening within, rather than to the outside world. Is kind of listening within. Yeah.
And I think you touched on something so important there, without judgment. And I think that's key. And that's also a practice within itself.
Yeah.
To learn and to do. And it's not something that we just, oh, I've done it once, you know, that's it.
Yeah.
Like, there are definitely days where it's harder to be more compassionate to ourselves, and there is that judgment. So I think that's a really important piece of mindfulness practices, is that we can maintain a bit more objectivity about what we're reflecting on or what we're engaging with, to allow us to really see things as they are and not as we want them to be, or what we think they should be doing, or, you know, how we expect things to be.
Yeah. And I think, as you said, it is probably one of the hardest things for most people, because we are conditioned to constantly compare ourselves to others. So it is tricky. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much today.
Thank you. No, thank you.
It's been so lovely. And, you know, there's so many things that you talked about that maybe in the future we could kind of explore a little bit further and kind of dive a bit deeper. But it's been really, really cool getting your perspective and understanding, you know, how it shows up in so many different ways, like you as an individual, within your family, and within your work. It's really cool to see, whilst there's those common threads, there's also bits that you know, you can tailor to the individual situations. So that's really awesome.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much, Lily, for the opportunity.
Thank you. Have a lovely day, and we'll speak soon.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.